I'm very glad to have been invited to this August conference, and I feel very much represented just by seeing this galaxy of scholars before me, this beautiful dome-like building, beautiful architecture. The theme of my paper is the growth of radicalization in Pakistan. Man, as some psychologists told, has no fixed nature. It is the tribe of environment, education, and training that determine his nature. Prior to the dawn of civilization, man living in caves and jungle was as savage, brute, and ferocious as wild beasts. The civilization man grew as human, but still with enormous beastly potential which, like dormant volcano, waits activation. In a situation of extreme frustration, he learns to be aggressive and seek pleasure in inflicting pain on others and in killing them, as well as subjecting himself to pain and suffering to the extent of enjoying being killed. He ceases to feel, to be afraid, to fear. The history of Pakistan has been the history of the paradoxical phenomena of Islamization and de-Islamization. Islamization generally of the entire Muslim world and particularly of Pakistan has been the war and move of the American policy to counter communism and fight the ex-Soviet invaders in Afghanistan. With American-sponsored jihadi training camps, a peaceful community namely Taliban were surprisingly transformed into ultimate warriors who came to know the Soviet war tactics and learned to counter them. During this phase, America played the role of the emancipator of Afghanistan, when from America and Europe enjoyed absolute freedom to move anywhere in Pakistan, in the tribal area, and even in Afghanistan. It was during this phase of Islamization that the pre-partition curriculum and syllabus known as Dars-e-Nizami of the religious madrasa was mysteriously subjected to the operation of open prison, and books of extremely sophisticated nature on philosophy, logic, mathematics, sciences, mysticism, literature, and narrative art were removed. When I asked an American new Muslim, an official in the curriculum wing of the Ministry of Education, namely Yusuf Salam, why these books were removed, he answered saying, "We need hardliner to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan, and these books produce thinkers instead of fighters." I was surprised to hear that. The madrasa were left with its lopsided curriculum consisting collection in textbooks related to the Quran, rote memorization and recital, its tafsir text commentary, the Prophet's sayings and practices, Islamic jurisprudence without its in-depth study, a curriculum posited in strict opposition to normative, sociological, and critical sciences. Even prior to this kind of operation, the religious curriculum of madrasa has been stagnant and static in the sense that it has never been revised to include books on philosophy, of history of Islamic civilization, archaeology, architecture, and fine arts. In the beginning of this polarization, its implication being dormant were never felt. But the cult of Islamization on one hand, and the lure of radicalization and takfir, that is charging one another of infidelity, on the other, unleash its aftermath of the trial of extremism, violence and terrorism. According to John Stuart Mill's notion of multiple causation, all this may be due to a number of causes as well as the cause and effect of a complex situation. The nature of madrasas oriented religious curriculum is, however, paradoxical in the sense that it has tremendous moral and psychotherapeutic value and at the same time being lopsided, rigid and static with spatial temporal disorientation and the menace of sectarianism, it tends to undo the good it claims to do. Prior to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and their involvement in war against the Soviets, Taliban were extremely a peaceful community, so much so that they used to be considered sheep. I will remember my encounter with them during my childhood in the mosque of my native town, Parachnar, Kuruveli, where they used to come and gather in throngs in a specific month of the year for collecting charity. They would spend the whole night singing poetic quatrains in Pashto and dancing to their tunes while tossing their head and jerking their bodies, all this activity in a sitting position in circle around their masters. When I recall that activity going on in a prayer place, it reminds me of the dance of whirling dervishes of the Punya Sufi order of Jalaluddin Rumi, whose monumental poetic work Masnavi was a part of the madrasa curriculum of those days, which regretfully stays removed from the curriculum now. With the collapse of communism and the defeat of the Soviet in Afghanistan, there occurred a sudden change in American geopolitical policy and strategy, with her surprising U-turn from Islamization toward de-Islamization. It was because there was no need for Islam to encounter communism. Arrows which were initially aimed at the ex-communist bloc were now turned toward the world of Islam, capitalizing either on the sway of dictatorial regime therein, though of secular and nationalistic character, such as that of Salam Hussein in Iraq, apprehended to possess nuclear or chemical weapons of mass destruction, or on serious social-political blunders and human rights violation instances such as those of ex-Taliban rule in Afghanistan and their destruction of the Buddha's giant statues in Bamiyan West, and what they committed of grave atrocities to the Hazara Shia population therein, as well as to the mixed population, mostly Persian-speaking one in the north of Afghanistan. Finally, it was the mysterious event of September 11 that was made a pretext for a total U-turn in American geopolitical and strategic attitude and behavior toward the world of Islam. And the word of Islam, with it, the Taliban, who were one of the most favored class of American social, political, and strategic priority, were now apprehended and projected as the greatest threat and danger with their madrasa culture to American security and liberty. And with this, the training camps, which were sponsored by America to prepare Taliban for jihad against the communist infidel of the ex-Soviet Union, were totally forgotten and lost sight of. The memory constantly kept afresh and refreshed of madrasa with their infrastructure of jihadi nature. Now it was America which came forward to replace the ex-Soviet invader in Afghanistan and got engaged in a long-term war against Taliban in Afghanistan with its grave repercussions in Pakistan and in the entire Indo-Pak region. In this second phase, Taliban learned to encounter them. In the second phase, Taliban came to know the American war tactics and learned to encounter them. In the first phase, the Taliban war activity against the Soviets was rationally controlled. But in the second phase, their war activity launched against America got suicidal with no fear of death. An attitude and behavior that they have learned from their long-term experience in war situations, especially from their religious conviction that martyrdom is nothing but a direct passage to paradise. Such kind of conviction and constant involvement in war strengthens such feeling. It is in the darkness of obscurantism and sectarianism, the germs of radicalization and war mania are initially born and thrive. Following North Alfred Whitehead's view, organismic view of the universe of human may be regarded as an organism, and sectarianism is like a cancer which spreads through and gnaws the entire organism. In other words, sectarianism in one part of the world affects its other parts. Prior to the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan and American intervention there has never been any case of radicalism in the region. What does this mean? It means that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was the greatest mistake ever made, repeated regretfully, in an unwise way in our time. What is the solution? The solution lies in what learned Professor Dr. Richard Boni referred yesterday evening to what Jesus Christ exhorts saying, love thy enemy, love thy neighbor. It has never been, it should never be in the Constitution of Pakistan to radicalize, which is self-evident from what the poet, philosopher of the East, Allama Iqbal, says about America. America, however, he says this in his poetic work, Beyond Mashriq. America, however, is a healthy element amongst the elements of Western civilization. This is perhaps because this country is free from the old, outmoded tradition, and its social intuition can accept and accommodate new and novel influences and thoughts. Now I'll recite the solution of my poem, English poem. From the cradle to the grave, knowledge seed and wisdom crave. Shrugs of inly thoughts of ours, with thy wings of eagle shade. Cliffs that lead to lofty peaks, with thy leaves, O tiger, pave. Be to ups and downs of life, surging, swelling, sweeping wave. Adam as new names of all things, robes he mastered all as slave. Jars of soul, the scroll of wisdom, fill, O inmates of the cave. Shake thy hands with non-terrestrial. Let the stars your banners wave. Go ahead, climb up and dive. Faith and love be thy stay. Clings to necks what tends to fly, offbeats making backs concave. Leave a scar on self for good, what to think, what to behave. Learn from what befell tsunami and Kashmir, whose mount did wave, as if they were tides to prove, limestone rest on moody wave. With the zamzam of compassion, stones of hatred melted lave. To the flute of love be new, let the ravens roam and rave. Lust and greed breed wars, germs of war. Put thy heart and reason brave, war erases what peace raises, peace does free and wars enslave. War is fully, peace is reason, this on graves did time engrave. Let them breathe as free as you, soul for free to daunted slave. Enter peace from top to bottom, checking doomsday, grim and grave. May thou show these ways of peace, straight to whom of peace O brave. Culture or civilization from the war of monsters save. Save thyself through saving others, God forgave him who forgave. Who grows others himself, he grows and gets back what he gave. Krishna, Buddha, Kung Fu, Zora, take their diva and be brave. Jesus, Hussain and Allah, smell in them what roses crave. Knowledge city is Muhammad and Ali, its main enclave. Enter city through its gate, through this shortcut, time is saved. Moses, Mary, Muhammad, Mother Earth, each M doth crave. Strike thy rock for 12 springs and thy string for sweet octave. Let the bell of iron time sing and steer thy name. Holds Qalander in his grave 7 seas of wit and fame. Thank you very much.